In the fashionable shopping district near St James's Palace stands one of London's most exclusive shoe shops. Mr. Eric Lobb supplies boots and shoes to many famous people. His grandfather founded the business in the gold rush days by making miners' boots with a special heel that concealed the gold. Autograph hunters would be interested in this book. Here are the penciled outlines of Gordon Harker's feet, and on the other pages are many more footprints of the famous. See for yourself some of the famous people whose feet have been carved in wood by the last maker.
I think if the original John Lobb were to walk in today, he would be very at home with what's going on here. Many things have changed, but when it comes to having a conversation with him about shoemaking, I think we would find a lot in common. And I would certainly have a lot to learn from him.
Jonathan is the fifth generation of Lobbs to follow in the family footsteps and splits his day between workbench and desk. He starts each morning crafting wooden lasts, the precise sculptures of a customer's feet, which a bespoke shoe is built on.
I need a measurement that says 9 5/8. At the moment I've got just over 9 3/4. Even just removing 1/8 of an inch can involve taking off quite a lot of the actual volume of the last. And you've got to take it off in the right place. So. I'm working to a principle that's grown up over a period of hundreds of years. They're traditions that have been tried and tested. If you do something outside those parameters, you simply end up having a shoe that doesn't fit properly.
Jonathan is just one of a team of 7 last makers, including some of the longest-serving staff members, Michael and Neil.
I pretty much wanted to be a carpenter. That was what my mindset was. And Mr. Eric Lobb suggested that I do glass making if I was interested in wood and carpentry, as part of the trade I didn't even know existed. Then I was smitten by it. I didn't think I'd be here for more than a year or two. I've been 34 years now, so that was a shock to the system.
I started off at a shoemaking college in Hackney, and I was there for 3 years. And then I just walked into the store, asked for a job, saw John Lobb, and I started about a month later. Mike and I have seen more of each other over the years than we have of our partners, which is a bit scary. But we come in here every day, we sit on the same stools, we go through the same actions, same motions, but of course everything is very different. Although it looks the same, what's going on in our head and what we're creating is different every day. It's not an exact science, it's a craft. And we've all got our own individual style. We can walk down to the last racks, and there's over 15,000 lasts down there, and I could pick out Michael's and he could pick out mine, because we all know our individual style of last making. Yeah, it's always nice to get a difficult foot. When you get a difficult foot, it's a joy because you're using all your skills. So it's not all repetition. We also get customers bringing in their sons to buy their first pair of shoes for them. And the greatest one I heard was the customer said to his son, "Son, welcome to your most expensive hobby ever."
We're not far off now.
It's just nice being around quality shoes. I haven't bought a pair of shoes in the shop maybe 30 years now. You wear shoes here, and we all went out one time to watch a game of football, and at half time we're all playing football in our Lobb shoes. Yeah, and it's just a pair of shoes for us now.
When you are doing something which is inherently peaceful, then your mind thinks about problems that you're trying to resolve, and what happens when you take away all the distractions, things come into mind. Put yourself in a quiet room and just see what happens. See what pops into your head.
From making the last to final polish, a pair of bespoke shoes passes through the hands of 7 skilled artisans, each focusing on just one part of the process. And a meticulous process demands a hefty price tag, over £4,000 for a pair of leather Oxfords. Small change perhaps for past customers like Aristotle Onassis, Frank Sinatra, or Prince Charles and the Duke of Edinburgh, who granted John Lobb their royal warrants and remain regular customers. John Hunter Lobb has been fitting famous feet since the 1950s and is now the head of the company.
The measurements we take from a customer's feet are fairly simple. You take an outline, a penciled outline, and then 3 measurements around it. Basically that's all. You make note of anything, peculiarities in it, has lumps or bumps. But the measurements are really quite simple. Well, when we've taken the measurements, they come to the case here and look around for what they would like us to make. And it can be anything. They can take a bit of this and a bit of that, and we put them together. It always takes us a rather long time to make a pair of shoes. The actual work involved itself is slow, and you can't hurry it because handwork can't be hurried. 6 months or so for a first pair. We've got to make the lasts and then make the uppers and then put the soles on. And since we've got a fair amount of work to do, it all takes a long time.
Each artisan settles into a different rhythm and pace. Making and attaching the sole may take days, while drawing the pattern and tailoring it to the customer's last can take a couple of hours.
The next operation is performed by the clicker, as they call him in the business. Cutter-outer to you. He's handled a good many miles of leather in his life and can tell at a glance the age and condition of the animal that it came from. The clicker's job is to cut out the leather from patterns made from the last. This is the first rough cutting, and he leaves plenty of margin for working.
So once I've finished clicking the uppers, then they are tied together as I'm doing now, and they are sent to one of the closers, and they do the next part of the process, which of course is to then close the uppers, stitch the uppers together.
Historian and author Brian Dobbs has been spending one morning a week in Lobb's for the past 40 years.
Many years ago I wrote the history of the firm. I became really intrigued by the fact that they had spent no time whatsoever really considering their history previously. When you look across these shelves, you can see that there's no coherent order whatsoever. Some I had there, and some I found over here too.
Brian is on the hunt for the names of the great and the good amongst almost 100 years' worth of customer records.
These are also old records which are probably intermediary between the ones that were upstairs and the oldest ones, which are across there. And I'm looking for something. Must be put back over there. I think I see what I'm looking for. I'll need the staple ladder to get to it, however. This is not only archaeology, this is mountaineering. Well, it wasn't arranged for historians, that's for sure. There we are. Now I can go and look at this at my leisure.
I get the leather from clicker as a rough cut, and then I open it and then started to cut out leather as a pattern. So the closing part is not that long actually, it's most of the time it's a preparation. And also, because of the bespoke, I think we ought to pay attention even small details, because customer paying for that every single details. This machine is already at least 60, 70 years old. I quite like it. This old machine, the stitch, it's like more bespoke look. Modern machine is like a more factory stitches. So that's why I like it, old one. Closing is you get satisfaction when you finish one pair of upper, because you see all these finished products. Sometimes it's really upset me if it doesn't go well, but when it's go well, it's really give me joy.
To keep the craft alive, new artisans are continually being trained. This morning, Iranian apprentice Param is making the threads he will need to hand-stitch the detail on a pair of shoes.
We put 3 threads together. The reason is to make the thread stronger. for the hand stitch, and it's 3 because we don't want it to be really thick and we don't want it to be really thin. We want something to look very neat and nice because it's in front of the shoes. British shoes are, for me, is the best, the construction-wise, the craft of British shoes, the best shoes in the world. That's why I came here.
The artisans working in the Warrens of St James's are just one part of a widespread shoemaking network. Closers and makers are often employed as pieceworkers, carrying out their work in home workshops. Charlotte Wainwright does most of her closing at home, but comes in 1 day a week to train Parham.
Yesterday I tried to lace it, I couldn't really.
Do you want me to do it?
You want to have a go? Oh. Please, thank you.
You're not pulling it far enough forward, and then you're just pulling it sideways. You're not pulling it away from the angle. I think it's just technique. Well, I started here when I was about 21, which was a long time ago, and I knew I wanted to do a craft. I wanted to make things. I wrote a letter to Eric Lobb and asked him if I could come and have a job, and he wrote me a very funny letter back saying that they didn't really employ very many women and there weren't any vacancies, but I could come and have a look round. So I came and then started on Monday, which was a bit of a shock to all of us. He also told me I couldn't wear trousers, that went. Monday morning I came in with trousers on. In fact, they were jeans, which nearly gave him a fit. Things tend not to change here that dramatically, to be honest. In fact, we got really quite excited one year because John Lobb said he was buying a new carpet for the shop, and when we came in and the new carpet was there, it was an exact replica of the old one. So there you go, that's how they feel about change here. A lot of the tools that I use, I bought from people who had them for, well, they probably worked with them for a good 60 odd years. These I bought from somebody called Harry, who's probably long gone now. And everything that they taught me, well, hopefully Parham will, teach somebody else in years to come. That's the idea. At least you've passed something on, and a bit of knowledge that won't die.
Down in the basement, the leather is cut for the soles, and everything is finally gathered together to build the shoe.
Now meet Mr. Hansen, a maker. He's the man who finishes off the job by sewing on the soles.
These days, the job is finished by Mariano, another craftsman drawn to London by Lobb's traditional ways.
When I came over here, I discovered that there are many techniques that in Spain they already died. It will take you between 3 to 5 years of an apprenticeship, and then it will take you your entire life to master the skills. What I'm going to do is sew this is the welts around the shoe. This is the piece of leather that attach and connect everything on the shoe. To weld a pair of shoes, each shoe, it depends on the size of the shoe, but say like 1 hour and a half each one. Each shoe, not a pair.
Well, in this particular book, these are the accounts. And the first person I see under the A's is the Right Honourable the Viscount Alexander of Tunis, who of course is the wartime leader and wartime hero from the African campaign. This is always the raw material for social history, for economic history, and you never know what you're going to find. I come to another one which looks like an ordinary military person, Lieutenant Colonel, but it's Lieutenant Colonel Hardy Amis, who of course becomes Sir Hardy Amis, the fashion designer. And although Lobb shoes are sometimes accused of being old-fashioned, there are any number of fashion designers who actually have worn Lobb shoes, like Sir Norman Hartnell, Ralph Lauren, Oscar de la Renta. So there's really a bit of a tribute to the fact that craftsmanship is never perhaps unfashionable. For customers who come through that door downstairs, they are coming and joining in the footsteps of celebrities, heroes, villains, people who have been coming to have Lobb shoes over 3 centuries. I think the holding of royal warrants has been very important throughout the luxury trades of London. Here we are right in the middle of clubland. We've got Boodles and Whites, and around the corner there's St. James's Palace. So this has always been a place where distinguished people have gathered. And to have the royal seal of approval, this is like an imprimatur and very precious to them.
What I'm doing is building the heels, and you build a heel layer by layer. Whatever you do with one shoe, you do the same thing to the other one. So you carry on the whole process at the same time. Physically, it is hard as well because I spend most of the time sitting down with my head bended down, and at the end of the day you feel stiff. You need to love it. It is something that it has to come from your heart. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
And here are some of the finished results of the processes you've seen, all made by hand in the old traditional way that's still the best, even in this machine age. All that remains now is to wrap them up and deliver them to the customer. And that's how famous people get their shoes. You could have a pair made yourself for about 10 guineas.
At the end of the day, John Hunter Lobb gives the completed shoes a final inspection.
I just look through them just to make sure everything seems okay, and then they're ready for the customer. Well, some shoes sit there forever. Sometimes the customers goes abroad for a few years. Occasionally they've been run out of money. You know, that happens to people, and they can't afford them anymore, so they leave them with us. Okay. When I started, there were lots of nobility in England still, but they're taking a rather low profile and they haven't quite got the same incomes that they had in those days. Our customers have changed, and nowadays we get people from the Middle East and from Japan and even from Russia and from China. They're in countries where they still have the ability to make enough money to have expensive items.
One regular customer is Wayne Scholes, head of an American technology company, who is such an admirer of Lobb's shoes that he pays his staff bonuses in bespoke footwear.
Here you get something that's made for your feet, for all those little weird things that my wife makes fun of. Here they're just custom. I love that.
Excited when I get my shoes.
And look, it was something that I could never afford as a kid. My family could never have afforded it, and so I think there's definitely an aspiration thing to it, that you want to be able to get something that's made just for you. Some people choose cars, you know, and they'll spend 100,000 or 200,000 on a car that, you know, for me, not that much interest in. But, you know, a pair of shoes that's made for me, that's comfortable, that's going to last for a long, long time, I find that pretty cool. I think that's unique.
So thank you very much for...
No problem. I'm excited to get here. Thank you.
It's terrible, I can't stop looking at them. So I want to change something. It's fatal.
In the fashionable shopping district near St James's Palace stands one of London's most exclusive shoe shops. Mr. Eric Lobb supplies boots and shoes to many famous people. His grandfather founded the business in the gold rush days by making miners' boots with a special heel that concealed the gold. Autograph hunters would be interested in this book. Here are the penciled outlines of Gordon Harker's feet, and on the other pages are many more footprints of the famous. See for yourself some of the famous people whose feet have been carved in wood by the last maker.
I think if the original John Lobb were to walk in today, he would be very at home with what's going on here. Many things. I'm working to a principle that's grown up over a period of hundreds of years. They're traditions that have been tried and tested. If you do something outside those parameters, you simply end up having a shoe that doesn't fit properly.
Jonathan is just one of a team of 7 last makers, including some of the longest-serving staff members, Michael and Neil.
I pretty much wanted to be a carpenter, that was what my mindset was. And Mr. Eric Lobb suggested that I do glass making if I was interested in wood and carpentry, as part of the trade I didn't even know existed. Then I was smitten by it. I didn't think I'd be here for more than a year or two. I've been 34 years now, so that was a shock to the system.
I started off at a shoemaking college in Hackney, and I was there for 3 years.
Things have changed, but when it comes to having a conversation with him about shoemaking, I think we would find a lot in common. And I would certainly have a lot to learn from him.
Jonathan is the 5th generation of Lobbs to follow in the family footsteps, and splits his day between workbench and desk. He starts each morning crafting wooden lasts, the precise sculptures of a customer's feet, which a bespoke shoe is built on.
I need a measurement that says 9 5/8. At the moment I've got just over 9 3/4. Even just removing 1/8 of an inch can involve taking off quite a lot of the actual volume of the last. And you've got to take it off in the right place.
So yeah, it's not all repetition. We also get customers bringing in their sons to buy their first pair of shoes for them. And the greatest one I heard was the customer said to his son, "Son, welcome to your most expensive hobby ever."
We're not far off now.
It's just nice being around quality shoes. I haven't bought a pair of shoes in the shop maybe 30 years now. You wear shoes here, and then I just walked into the store, asked for a job, saw John Lobb, and I started about a month later.
Mike and I have seen more of each other over the years than we have of our partners, which is a bit scary. But we come in here every day, we sit on the same stools, we go through the same actions, same motions, but of course everything is very different. Although it looks the same, what's going on in our head and what we're creating is different every day. It's not an exact science, it's a craft. And we've all got our own individual style. We can walk down to the last racks, and there's over 15,000 lasts down there, and I could pick out Michael's and he could pick out mine, because we all know our individual style of last making.
Yeah, and it's always nice to get a difficult foot. When you get a difficult foot, it's a joy because you're using all your skills.